Hello, 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 and welcome back to IVF in Your Pocket, your waiting room companion. In today's episode, you're going to learn all the questions you must ask before your frozen embryo transfer. And at the end, I'm going to offer some tips, good things to know, so might want to listen to that about the frozen embryo transfer. So congratulations, you're at the point where you made it to your transfer. You're about to transfer a frozen embryo. You've probably been through quite a bit to get to this point. It's definitely worth taking a moment to just acknowledge that you have gotten really far in the journey, and what's to come is both very exciting and pretty nerve-wracking. So this episode is going to talk about frozen embryo transfers, which really are more common than fresh transfers. They're really the type of transfer that most people do nowadays. So that is the focus of today's episode. Also, this is the follow-up episode to my IVF consultation questions you must ask before you start an egg retrieval. And if you haven't checked that out, that's a good one to start with. Okay, so one really important question to ask your care team before the frozen embryo transfer, and you should underline this one, is why are they choosing the protocol that they're choosing? So they're likely, your RE is likely choosing between a medicated frozen embryo transfer or what they call non-medicated / natural transfer protocol. And so a lot of times patients will just kind of go along with what their RE is suggesting, and your RE might not even say, hey, we're doing a medicated transfer. They might just be operating under the assumption that you're going to move forward together with a medicated transfer or a non-medicated transfer, and you want to understand which one they're choosing and why. So I'm going to break that down a little bit. For a medicated transfer, it is what it sounds like. It's a transfer that's using estrogen, progesterone mainly, and then preventing ovulation and likely triggering ovulation with medication. And for a non-medicated transfer, usually that means you're just going based on the natural hormones created in your cycle. Sometimes there's supplementation there too. So sometimes there can be a hybrid, but those are basically the different kinds of transfers. And usually what I see here in the Bay Area in the United States, hello, our international listeners. This is a really good thing if you are listening not in the US to definitely check with your clinic. So most clinics here in the Bay Area are, I believe, leaning towards a medicated transfer cycle. That is the one that's more common. If you're listening and you have some different information, I'm very open to that. Please write in and let me know if you have a different take on that. But yes, my understanding is that most clinics here in the US and in the Bay Area lean towards a medicated transfer. That's the estrogen progesterone. It's more easy to predict and control. Now, some patients and some REs want to work with less medication, that they want to lean into what your cycle does naturally or your surrogate cycle does naturally. So you want to get a sense from them if they're going a medicated route, why, or if they're going a non-medicated route, why. So are you someone that maybe ovulates pretty typically, your cycles are pretty regular? That might make you a candidate for a non-medicated cycle, but that's definitely something to know going in exactly why your RE is choosing that. So a little tip here, a little asterisk here to know if you are doing a medicated cycle or probably there's some supplementation in your natural cycle if you're doing a non-medicated cycle. Something to highlight is to just double check the medications that your RE is suggesting. So sometimes there's ones that are quite expensive. They're not as common, but sometimes your RE can suggest a medication like a progesterone gel or suppository that can be quite pricey. So if you get a medication list with something that looks like it's outrageously priced, which some of the progesterone creams are outrageous, you just want to double check with your RE and say, hey, is this one necessary? If you feel like you'd like a more affordable option. So just keep an eye out for that if you're given a medication list and one of those medications stands out as quite expensive. A second crucial question to ask your care team RE before your embryo transfer is, have we done everything possible to get the uterine lining, the environment, ready for this embryo? Have we done all the tests that you suggest? If we haven't, why? And just really knowing that you can go into this embryo transfer as prepared as possible. Now, if you're working with a care team that you trust, which of course is very vital in this IVF process, it's likely they've thought of everything and you're good to go. They want this to work as much as you do, but it's worth just asking, have we done anything, everything possible, and is there anything we're missing? Also making sure you get the care instructions from your care team in terms of exercise, what's okay, light exercise is usually okay, what kind of diet are they recommending, if anything, any modifications, any supplements. So if you somehow are on the journey and your care team missed that, it's really important to reach out. One thing that often gets missed is the importance of hydration. Drinking a lot of water is good for us always. And then other things that you might want to ask your care team are there's a lot of information out there. Your acupuncturist, if you're working with one, might have given you some recommendations. A big one is red light therapy that has become more common now, and you just can ask and double check your RE on something like that. I don't know where REs are standing on this as of yet around stuff like red light therapy. The research is changing really rapidly. So red light therapy, if you hear something like that out there, get your RE's opinion. Now, eating a pineapple core is really common and fun, maybe if you like pineapple. And so those kinds of things are probably just fine to do. You're probably not going to hear an RE say you have to eat a pineapple core. But again, some of these recommendations out there, you just want to see where your RE's at on that. And just checking in about recommendations around intercourse and kind of what the RE is looking for in terms of uterine lining, just so you can follow along and know if your lining, which is one of the common obstacles in transfer, if your uterine lining isn't looking thick enough, what your RE's plan is. They will have a plan around this. And if they don't, they should. And finally, for some tips, when you go in for your embryo transfer, if you're allowed to take a video of that actual transfer, that's sometimes a really nice thing to have, or definitely asking for a picture of the embryo if video isn't allowed in the exam room is a really nice thing to have. It's like a little memento of all your hard work and this momentous occasion. And of course, there are delays that can happen in a transfer. So that can be really frustrating, and it's just something to know going into it that delays do happen. But hopefully that won't be the case for you as you embark on this more exciting part of the journey. Another thing to know is the transfer is not as intense physically as the retrieval. There's usually, especially if you're doing a medicated cycle, not as much monitoring. The medications are still intense, but you're likely not giving yourself multiple shots a day until you get to that progesterone shot if you're going to go that route. So it can be, in comparison to the retrieval, a little less intense physically. And finally, it's really good to think about how to go into the transfer and how to relax if you can. And so very much like the 2-week wait episode on how to work with your anxiety around the 2-week wait. If you haven't listened to that episode, check that one out. But I talk in that episode about a distraction list, a very specific distraction list. It's a great idea to go into a transfer thinking about your relaxation list. So you are preparing your body physically for this exciting next step. Let's prepare emotionally. What helps you? And this one's fun. Like, what helps you relax? Not that you need to, but if you wanted to, what are some things that help you relax? Is that going to be like a lot of hikes in nature? Is that going to be some nice, delicious soup, something that nourishes your body? This is a good time, both the day of transfer, leading up to transfer, post-transfer, to just think about relaxation. Not that that's going to impact the outcome, but because it's nice to feel relaxed, particularly at this point in the journey. You also want to ask your RE and care team when that beta draw is, and start preparing for what happens after the transfer and what emotions might come up, and knowing that it might be a difficult wait. And that's a good time to check out the 2-week wait anxiety episode that has some really clear tips about how to get through that nerve-wracking period. That concludes our episode for today. I'd love to hear how your embryo transfer went, what helped you, what questions you may have added to this list. So please reach out at alexandrapsychotherapy@gmail.com or find me on my website, alexandragarystock.com. And remember, until next time, you are not alone.